So good afternoon and welcome to the CIO Gurukul 22nd CIO&Leader Annual Conference discussion titled on Modernized Data Management for Banking and Financial Industry. This session is being brought to you by CIO&Leader in association with HP India. I'm Sachin Mashelkar, Executive Director, Enterprise Technology at 9.9 Group, your moderator for this session. I'll briefly introduce a topic as we have exactly 1 hour in hand, as this being a live broadcast event. We won't be in a position to extend the timeline, so I would request your cooperation to keep your views crisp and to the specific. So let me give a quick context of this conversation before we deep dive into the topic. That the financial sector is deluged with data, what with the huge volumes pouring in from variety of devices in any number of formats and from devices sources, as you know, is no secret. This amassed wealth of data can be used to create personalized services and construct contextualized experiences for customers. The realization is also dawning that this explosive growth of digital data promises new avenues for growth, provided actionable insights from the varied information sources can be drawn and analyzed. To do this, financial institutions would require sophisticated algorithms and analytics. The business insight so derived will create a clear, sustainable competitive advantage. However, the key to this is the ability of institutions to process their data better, faster, and cheaper. Not an easy task for an IT though, as combining the varied sources of information, internal and external, and that's a challenge I think the IT leaders like you face. And in the new environment, old ways and systems of working with data really not working anymore. The current challenges demand that banking institutions adopt a structured enterprise data management initiative. Every aspect of financial business today relies on the accuracy of data. No effective decision making can take place in the absence of it. So to become data-driven enterprises, financial institutions must harness all this data for insights and quick decision making. How can you get a complete, consolidated, and trustworthy view of all your enterprise's data? How can you access the data you need anytime, anywhere, and eliminate redundant and overlapping ones? Let's find out all these answers from our eminent panelists. What kind of unified data management framework and automated processes can solve such issues? What kind of tools, systems, and banking financial system analytics softwares are there to help the big banking and financial institutions streamline their data management? And how can enterprise data management program works? So welcome once again, everyone. I will now briefly introduce our eminent panelists. So we have with us Mr. Sankarsan Banerjee, Chief Information Officer, RBL Bank, Mr. Praveen Sharma, General Manager, Digital Banking, Union Bank of India, Ms. Shweta Srivastav, Chief Technology Officer and a CISO with Paul Merchants Finance, Mr. Ayaskant Mohapatra, Chief Technology Officer of Bank of Baroda Financial Solutions, Mr. Durga Prasad Swaminathan, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer, Cholamandalam Investment, Mr. Sriju Rautar, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer with Care Ratings, Mr. Amol Jawaharkar, Group Head IT and CISO, AK Capital, Mr. Shivakumar Nandipati, Chief Digital Officer of Federal Bank, Ms. Supriya Datta, NS Consultant IT from NSE IT, and Mr. Sajid Chakingal, Head of Global Technology and Services at TMF Group. And from our partner side, we have Ms. Devika Nair, who is a country manager with HP India for a BFSI vertical. So with that, let me start, my question with Amol. Amol, what kind of, business and technology drivers for data management you see? And I'll follow that question with Mr. Sankarsan Banerjee, and we'll go on that with Ms. Devika also. So just if you could, Amol, you want to just look at what kind of data management drivers you're looking at.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, great. See, fundamentally, we believe in 3 pillars. One is the speed, second is the agility, and the third is the security. Now, being an security officer and primarily being the infrastructure head as well, these are the 2 aspects on the entire rhythm of the data management is based on. Speed agility, as you know, basically is where we try to look at the positioning of the data, where to be moved, how to be moved. Okay. because too much of movement of data is also very precautious and dangerous for us. And the security of it, which is the most important factor in this. So any solution today we design, the first primitive action what we do is we decide what is the security solution we should put around it. So let it be an encryption system or a data loop which is required, or basically where to migrate this data at one point of time. So I think the three pillars where we basically look upon, or the paradigms of any security or the data management, is about speed, agility, and the security.
Thanks, Amol. Thanks for that point of view. And I would like to have a similar, reaction on the same question which I just asked. What are the business and technology drivers you see, Shankarshan? And I will invite after that on the view from Supriya ji.
So nowadays, data has become quite a challenging topic because we are encouraged to share more data, but at the same time, share less data. We are encouraged to have data as the fundamental foundation of our business. But there are lots of restrictions as to who can see what data and whether you have consent, whether you have access, whether you have. So the restrictions on sharing of data have become quite a burden to the original architecture, where we used to have common data pools where different applications could share data for each other. This is causing a huge restructuring of how we look at what moves and what doesn't. And yes, there are ways to protect it, but the best way is to not do the movement at all. For instance, Aadhaar, we stopped using the Aadhaar card itself. We now use a tokenized version of it. We are in progress to using a tokenized version of our credit cards very soon. We have to fundamentally rethink our architectures so that we allow the sharing of useful data without the risk of sharing data that can be potentially used in other fraudulent situations. As data movements have come up, fraudsters have started taking advantage of the move. When the trains came, people started getting train robbers. Till then, there were no train robbers because there were no trains. Today, that is our challenge, that we have a lot of people who are trying to make use of the fact that data architectures have become very unified to defraud us, to compromise. Privacy is another question that we have to deal with, which has nothing to do with defrauding per se. Privacy is something that people want to maintain. It's become a much bigger deal in the recent past than it used to be. And to tell you the truth, we are still grappling with a consent network for sharing data. Who ideally owns what kind of data, and whether we have consent or not to share it. And that is another challenge we'll have to take up as part of this transformation.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for putting that context. And Supriya ji, as therefore I critically invited your three views: one from a banking, one from a trading side, and one now from a stock side, which you are representing there. What are, according to you, the technology and business drivers in data management?
Yeah, thank you, Sachin ji. So on the data management, like as Shanky was speaking, and before that, Amol also spoke about it. One other aspect of the business and technical driver which is coming into data management is that no one is now satisfied with only the data being presented in a proper unified way. What is happening is people are expecting artificial intelligence and ML algorithms to run and give value-added services. That is another ask which is happening on the data, and especially on the BFSI front. We were earlier struggling with giving data a single view, then having the data quality. All those things have gone. Data governance is, of course, there. Data federation, data quality, those are the basic hygiene. Now the ask is coming with AI ML. People want value-added services. There need to be more, meaning coming out of the data. So that is one of the business and technical drivers we are seeing that is getting driven, at least in the exchange space. Now, with the amount of order and trade data which is there, earlier, surveillance was to look at the patterns. Now we are trying to develop algorithms to see if there are any anomaly which can be detected in the trading pattern, which is a predictive in nature, that a broker was trading in X way. His pattern has suddenly changed to Y. Can it predict an anomaly in the future? So that is the new business driver which is coming. The business people want some AI ML feature to be added onto data. That was what I felt was a new angle coming into the data management.
Thank you, Supriyaji. Thanks for putting
Platform.
that perspective and really articulating it well. With that, let me invite now views of Mr. Durga Prasad and then following with that, Shiju. The question to both of you is that the data management is important, but what are the impediments to be addressed? And therefore, what are the business imperatives you see which one needs to address from a business standpoint? And a financial institute today have a mass wealth of data from which they can create personalized services and construct. So how do you see these impairments? So Durga Prasad, if you would like to react that to first.
Sure. Thanks, Sachin. I think, like I think the previous panelists mentioned, for the financial institutions, data is the key. There is no physical product that we are out there selling in the market. And the key impediments we see as a financial institution is twofold. One, making sure the right quality of data is being presented for the users to make their decisions on. I think given the pace of change is probably the fastest among the different industries, will be the fastest in BFSI. And you will see the kind of fintechs coming in and so on. There is significant competitive pressure that all systems are constantly in a change mode, which means the kind of data models and the underlying data structures you have across the systems are consistently getting updated. Like Mr. Banerjee said, a few years ago, you would have had Aadhaar as a base to capture information, and then there is a regulation saying Aadhaar needs to be must. So a lot of, let's say you are doing like Ms. Datta mentioned, you have a customer level view, which may have been based on Aadhaar as a basis to identify a customer and say, what is my overall risk exposure to a customer? Is there a suspicious transaction against that particular customer? So the kind of data quality issues and the changing pace and regulatory impact is one big impediment where you are constantly on a treadmill trying to balance or still keep balancing the balls. That's one big aspect to it. I think the second one is related to, again, a bit on the regulation, is with the significant Data Privacy Act coming into picture. And like Mr. Banerjee said, a lot of data we are bringing in together. How do we then handle to make sure that if GDPR, our own Data Privacy Acts will have options for customer to say, please remove my data from your environment. So having a view of the flow of data, the lineage of data, what we maintain where, and ability to make sure we adhere to the regulatory aspects is going to be a big impediment when we move in this data journey.
Shiju, you would like to react to this question which I just asked.
Thank you, Sachin. Good morning, everyone. I think it's a very good question which has come in, and we have been hearing a lot about data since last couple of years now. So I think everyone comes with buzzwords. Data is in oil, data is in soil. So it has become now buzzwords in every discussion, I think. But more than that, I believe for an organization, bigger challenge is the visibility. Second is the classification. How do we do that for the classification? Because today when we say we have got tons of data, definitely we don't know, we only talk. But how do we make sure that the visibility is there for everyone in the business or from the technology perspective, and we make a productive value-added services from that? So that's, I think, the bigger challenge. And the bigger challenge out of that is the skill sets, which I foresee in the market today. Because when we want to have a data analytics in place, we can have a lot of tools and solutions, but how to run, how to operate, who will operate, that's the biggest challenge which I foresee now. Second, the business keeps hearing about the buzzwords from AI and ML, but rather than having a use case in hand, they want to have AI and ML to be implemented and to be productized. So I'm saying, unless you have the business use cases and the value-added processes in the products known, what sort of models you will build in. So I think those are the challenge. So this is bigger gap between technology and the business, because technology is not aligned with the business goals. That's what I feel. And I think we, as a technology guys, we may have to change the work and the strategy what we have. So we may have to become more from data CDO now, chief digital rather than chief digital. we may have to become a chief data officers now, and we may have to understand the value from the data, what we can get, the data on which we are sitting on top of it. So I come from the data background. I was there for a decade almost with largest credit bureau. So I know the importance of the data, each and every data. And definitely we, all of us hail from BFSI. So when we talk about the data, there are two parts. One, which will be regulated by regulatory bodies, which we may not be able to publish, as Shanky mentioned about it, because today, when we talk about the privacy, regulatory comes into the picture. So definitely for BFSI, it's a very, very stringent regulatory models which are there in terms of not publishing the data, and the data which can be published outside. So that's a bigger challenge which I foresee in terms of BFSI sectors.
Thanks, Shiju. Thanks for putting that perspective. Now, I would like to have, before I go to Devika and Sajit and Mr. Sivakumar, I would like to invite one view from Mr. Ayaz Khan, especially the credit card company of Bank of Baroda. How you see this business impairments, Ayaz Khan?
Thanks, Sachin. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. So the perspective, what I would like to say, just like I heard that everybody talk about data security and all these things on this side. So anyway, at the same time, also business need the data to drive the business, right? So there's always a catch that whether what can be shared or what cannot be shared. So now we're talking about which way, what is the method to share. So we can't shy out not to share, because there is always a ask for business. They want to run the business, they need to know the data. Yeah, that's always there's a discussion between business and IT or the technology, how securely, though we can say we are a custodian of data, but a business say we are the owner of data. Then always this cat and dog fight going on, right? That keep on going. That in every organization gets keep on going on. Being a financial organizations, earlier used to, when you start, then it was a kind of coming out the MIS report, end of the day report. So now business used to drive the logic, they have to derive the logic. So that the persona has been changed, right? So now everything should be in the fingertip. I see always the AI/ML, what they talk about, it's a very generically used. Sometimes people don't understand but start using. So I feel this is abuse to use AI/ML, say that I want AI/ML without understanding what is AI/ML altogether, right? So I see this is kind of tool what is coming out, most of the BI tools or analytics tools help business to protect the data somehow. Because the data is already there. We have a lot of concept data. Might be the study says 65% of data is not usable data, but it's there. So we still manage those. 35% is out of those 100% is actually usable data. But to derive between the difference is a kind of big question, how to derive this one. I see the technology platform, what is coming with this AI or you can do BI kind of tools, gives it protection plus business satisfaction, two-way. I'll explain what I think and personally on this side. Protection means I'm not sharing the data over an email or it's FTP or it's a file to the users. It's protected one way. Other way that if whenever the business want, they have the option to filter out the data through the tool. So that's the way I'm protecting. So I stop mass sharing of the data, and same time I don't share unnecessary data to the business, which can lead to a theft or might be misuse. So I see the technology always going to be a driven to protect data, same time used to business and give a useful model to business. That's what my thought on it.
Thank you, Askanji. Thanks for sharing those very important specifics. With that, let me invite now Devika, from a solution side of you. What kind of trends are you seeing, Devika, on the data management strategy, and how you see the financial institutions, IT leaders actually dealing with it in your interactions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sachin. So, we've all been talking, very interesting facts that we see all around, and I think we can very clearly conclude that data is at the center of every business action. It's not just a transaction, but every interaction that is there, whether with internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, data is at the center of all of it. And so it is, it's not even a use case or an application, but, data is business for all of us. And definitely, it is not a particular platform or a solution, that can really help us with the data management, because data management, if you see, it's basically, it starts from identifying the right data or relevant data managing their entire life cycle, right up to the phase of analyzing it, getting insights, then retaining it for regulatory purposes, and then purging it out. And during that entire life cycle, I think we were talking about consistency of the data. We were talking about how to share the data. We were talking about protection of the data, masking it, how do we do it? So the whole idea is, if we have to manage this entire data securely and with governance, there is always, some kind of process and controls that you need to have. And on the other hand, what internal and external stakeholders want is ease, flexibility, speed, anywhere, anytime data access, we talk about that. So the whole paradigm of data management is about how you are able to balance these two aspects, and how you can bring in more, autonomy, self-service, and still at the same time have a complete governance. So you will have a lot of tools. The idea is what we see in the industry today. You have a lot of point solutions, you have a lot of tools, you have a lot of platforms. These actually span from edge to, to the core, to the cloud. And obviously all customers, and we also at HP encourage that customers should be able to leverage the most optimized, workload optimized platforms for their needs. Now, right from when you're acquiring the data, you're storing the data, you're analyzing it, and retaining it, you should be able to use all the options. And if you want to do it, I think what the customers need today is a framework which gives them a unified data ops. So right from being able to handle different types of data with their different velocities, veracities, and the type of analytics that you want to run on it, and also what kind of, during the entire life cycle of that data piece, how do you manage the security, privacy, and all those aspects. And for that, it is the framework, overall framework, which they are looking at, rather than being stuck to a particular technology or a platform. And that's where we believe that the customers have to move, or they are already moving from storage management to data management. And hence we are working with our customers to build that framework, and that is at the core of all our innovation and solutions that we are bringing to the customer today, where they are able to bring in that flexibility to be able to choose between these different fleets or pools of resources that are available to them. And they should be able to monitor and be able to trace the lineage of the data across all of this, and also be able to manage the security very seamlessly, and governance of how this data is being utilized and who has access to it. Because one aspect is making anything that goes amiss, if we do not have this unified framework of governance, security, and the way we manage it, it could lead to inadvertent misses. So this is what we are working with customers. And when we are talking of AI, how we could leverage AI. So, in fact, we have developed this framework where we help customers, with a certain framework where they're able to achieve these goals. So we use AI to help customers, first identify, depending on the various parameters of a data set requirement, where should they place the data, first of all, so that'll, if they can use a tool to identify which would be the best fit for them. So that is where we use, AI and in an intelligent data platform. Also, we try to use AI platforms to make this more autonomous and self-healing, so that the availability part is taken care of. So that's what we see happening, and that's how we are working with customers to address data management.
Thanks for that articulation, Devika. And I think putting across the trends which are there in the market, you see in the financial institutions. So with that, now let me invite some more views here from our other panelists. Sajid, and I'll go to then Mr. Kumar. So, the whole structured, unstructured data on cloud mapping, which we see, and now with the edge challenge, how do you see this whole impacting on the data management? Sajid, you would like to talk about that?
Yeah, Sachin, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be in this eminent panel. Good afternoon, everyone. Sachin, probably you triggered my nerve, to be honest, with this question, because that's exactly is what we are in at this point of time. Because being a global company, working across 93 odd regulations, it's quite obvious that we have the challenge, in terms of how you store your data, with all the regulations and all the client requirements what we have from each country, each governance structure. How do we translate them into a meaningful global output? How do we manage them? How do we host them? All that stuff of challenge, because most of the panelists have touched almost all of those challenges, and with on top of it, now we have our multi-cloud journey coming in as well, where the hosting is going to be right from different type of public clouds towards private and to the edge. So it's all about it's not about where you keep the data or host the data, but it's all about how you plan to consolidate them to create some sort of single source of truth, or what I call is a golden record. How do you create that golden record from a global view, or in terms of how you do your consolidation style? How do you talk about the coexistence of those data, and many times removing or managing the duplications, and of course creating the central repository without ignoring the regulatory aspects, right? So example, right from a country where example from Europe probably would have a very, very, very different regulation from something in the far east of Asia, right? So how do you take the ones which are only there or which are allowed to take from that edge and bringing into your coexisting global model to provide outputs, right? And it's all about, and again, we always talk about the personalizations towards customers, the end customers, which is external. In a company like us, or who deals with multiple service lines or multiple disciplines, there is also a bit of personalization which is needed internally as well, right? So example, a guy deals with the tax, or the guy deals with a banking. It's entirely different. The view is entirely different, and no more people want to spend time on finding those churning out those data. So example is, I think one of the panelists which previously touched upon, I would like to see what I like to see, right? Whether it be internal or external, doesn't matter. So that makes the life much more tougher for any IT guy. And often we put our technologies in the front, and often it gets beaten up. And what I would recommend or try to suggest is put the business goals in the front, and technology can always support you, whether it be your edge, public, private, whatever it is, wherever you want to host the data. So that's what I think from a global perspective, that's a challenge what I have.
Thank you, Sajid, for that. Now, let me invite the view of Mr. Sivakumar. How do you see the rise of the edge in this impact of data management? Siva.
Hey, thanks, Sachin. Thanks for making me part of this panel. This is Sivakumar, Chief Digital Officer from Fedfina. Like how Siju said that, I think going forward we'll be called as Chief Data Officers only. That's what things are going to figure out. We also have discussed data is oil, data is oil and all, but I have a different opinion of saying data is a car. The only reason is I wanted to compare this data privacy acts or data protection as a brakes. All that one instance which I have to ask people to think was, if there are no brakes in the car, you would not drive faster. So these data protection acts or data privacy acts in a way help us to tune the speed and go on with that. The reason we need this was the customer behavior has been changing a lot. If you are looking at all the enhancements which were going to happen for the customers, there's starting from new customer walk-ins of the lead management system onwards, the trust Google listings reviews. There is an NLP happening to find out keywords. So that's again a data. Account openings, video KYC is again a data in a different format. Payments, customer services on the portals, again a data. Customer service as a glossary, FAQs, chatbots, again a data. Even collections bots also had come in the in our NBFC industry. More or less, the branches are turning into sky branches, which is making us to store lots and tons of data. Now, with this so much amount of data, which is huge, I have to say that Google Analytics and all are adding another layer to create and view us from a multiple perspective. So all that, the problem is there is a lot of data and they're in silos. While we are trying to keep them infra-wise at a single place using data lake, but still, to see them together and make a better assessment or, using ML models, especially unsupervised learning. Most of us were still at supervised learning level only at this point of time, working on the parameters which we know. But to see it unsupervised learning is actually unlocking the potentials. Even Amazon ML also supports 3 types of models: binary classification, multi-class classification, and regression. We all know that, but we almost, most of the time, we are working on the regression methodologies only. See, one example which has come across was some supervised learning insurance. When I'm trying to take my personal term insurance, while I was happy to take it 70, 75, these guys keep on popping up saying that 43% of the users have taken till the term of 85. Oh, then I actually wait for a minute and think, oh, maybe the 43% of people are doing something right, so I also should do that. And even taking an example, even from our cross-selling or the banks also, 73% of the customers between age to 40, 45 who has taken home loan, between 25 to 50 lakhs have taken an insurance. So this is again a very valuable insight which is coming from different sources, which would help us to improve the revenue models as well in the same company. Yeah.
Exactly, Siva.
I have
And I
a
think
point here.
the point you ended with the whole business model and monetizing this. I'm going to my next question, in fact, leading to that only. So, I'll come to Shankar and Amol with that. As this rise of edge, but there are still, the business models getting built around and the whole monetization side of it. How do you see that, Shankar?
So actually, I strongly agree with Mr. Sajid's point on the fact that we are ignoring kind of at the beginning of the business uses of data. We have become very excited by the potential for data use, but we have stuck to a very small number of possible models and uses. And yes, we've extracted some value, but in many cases, actually, we've not extracted very much of the value that is possible. We still have a lot of distance to go on that. And we are at the moment getting a little bit constrained by all the regulatory pressure that is coming on us to go the other way, protect data instead of share it and analyze it. And yes, that is a challenge. Of course, we have to balance the two. Like Facebook is facing a lot of challenge on privacy because it does analytics of its data a little too well for most people's liking. But at the same time, Facebook has been able to monetize, has been able to apply its models to actual outcomes. Whereas in many cases, and I've seen this across industries, except actually in capital markets does a lot of, actual trading with data, data-driven trading is a very common thing in capital markets. But that level of data usage for business outcome is quite rare in most companies. In most companies, data and the insights generated are used to drive MIS reports. Whereas, for instance, Google made its success by automating the auctioning of ad sites. There is no MIS report here. In fact, it's pretty hard to get an MIS report out of Google. But the auctioning becomes a lot more efficient with the feedback loop on what has happened before, what has happened in the last 10 seconds, what has happened in the last hour. That requires a restructuring of the businesses underlying it. You see, ad serving was there before Google also. The data that was available for ad serving was available before Google. Even Google, it did not start with that. They stumbled upon it later. And that changed their industry. I mean, the previous ad serving world was 1/100th of the size of what it is today. And that is primarily driven by a model change and not just a change in what the data shows you. What the data is showing you is still what it showed you 20 years ago. Elections have changed to fit, we've seen Prashant Kishore being a rather visible face of how data can win elections, right? And because he has changed the way campaigning is done and not just a question of how predictions are done. So I think that is one big thing we are still lacking. We don't yet have the imagination to use all the data modeling that is available to us. And I think that's evolving. And I've spent some time in capital markets. I can tell you for sure, capital markets risk management is far ahead of the risk management in banks. Again, there is no reason why it should be. It is very similar risk management. It's just that capital markets has invested a lot more in applying that in real time. So again, capital markets risk management is very little to do with MIS because it is very quick, right? The speed of the markets is very high. So it is all automated. And the models that are used, like a circular trading model, can take 5 years worth of data and make a decision for a 2-3 second answer. That kind of data modeling and direct feedback into the fraud management systems, I don't see even in the regular banking world. E-commerce to a certain extent has progressed a lot there, but there is a lot of gap between what can be done and what is being done today, and that is the gap also that we should focus on, not just the compliance requirements.
Thank you, Sankaran. I think you really touched upon a very important point. I think using data for a predictive analysis, and therefore then the different business models growing and shaping up in a different level.
I unfortunately do have to leave. I had another conflicting thing that I could move.
Sure.
So before I'll bid you all goodbye, it was an interesting discussion so far. Hopefully you will continue it.
Really appreciate, Shankaran, your time, and I'll touch upon some other areas one-on-one with you. But thanks for your time. Yeah. So with that, let me move to Amol and Supriya ji, as how you see this whole side of revenue models and monetization in your respective businesses. Amol, you would like to react to that first?
Yeah. First of all, I think I'll like to add up on the edge computing which you said. So there has to be a pragmatic approach when it comes to the modeling and identification of the edge computing. Now, it depends from enterprise to enterprise. Like Mr. Banerjee explained that between the capital market, the risk factor is very high compared to the bank, and it's absolutely the fact in that case, because we primarily concentrate on the areas of cyber security more than the information security. Now, with that aspect, our approach is always looking at the data from the holistic point of view. Like I mentioned in my previous discussion, that moving the data is also one of the aspects which we take into account when we have to have too much of remodeling, analytics to be done. Or let's take an example like a security, accidentally you end up deleting the data because of some ransomware and other things. So rebuilding the entire system from the scratch, that is a time aspect you have to consider when you're actually considering any of the edge computing solution. So most of the edge computing solution which we have right now consider gives us a speed which requires us to get it created within a spontaneous time, within a fraction of seconds. So it makes our job very easy at point of time. Then again, like Shiju mentioned a few minutes back, the classification. So the classification has to be importantly identified to decide which is the data which you want to move, or which is the data where you want to do more analytics, and based on which the sizing has to be done. And then the data which has to be moved can be then looked into the areas of monetizing into various aspects of business analytics and deriving some charts, reports, MIs, which could be used for your advantage. But that classification has to be there by de facto standards to ensure that you are able to classify the data and then use it to the appropriate standard.
Thanks, Amol, for putting that perspective. Supriya ji, you would like to add to this?
Yes, so we have already spoken about it, the capital markets, anyway, they do data monetization. But what we feel at the capital market is that is not enough. There is the basic data monetization is done because you need the tick data and all to do trading. So that is there. Data-driven trading is there. Data monetization is there. What else can be given beyond that? The analytics on the capital market data is a thing which is being asked from many of the broker traders, the smaller ones who always do not have the analytical power. And another factor which has come up very strongly is, while so far we were talking about data at rest analytics, a new paradigm has come, real-time analytics. So people want, analytics on the streaming data. So there is, a product which has been launched where it has just been launched. The market tick data is taken to the cloud, and on top of it, there are real-time analytics being driven. So data at rest analytics is now moving out, and then you charge on the basis of subscription. While these are on the monetization aspect, one challenge which is coming to the stock market is with the explosion of data. The data explosion, how do you handle it? How do you do the storage? We were earlier into, okay, you move into the disk storage, SAN storage, that can fail. Move into cloud, in cloud also cloud security. So the explosion of data handling, governance, that is also a part which is coming into the stock markets. along with the monetization, and it is moving towards now real-time analytics, real-time and AI ML driven. As we were discussing, people, they most of the time do not know what they want, but there are some interesting use cases coming on artificial intelligence, ML, especially on anomaly detection. We were anyway doing fraud detection. Fraud detection was anyway being done in the exchange. It was being done at end of day fraud detection to see if there has been any circular trading and all during the day. But now intraday requirements, real time is the new talk which has started happening. So wanted to add that.
Thanks. I think that was a very interesting perspective. And therefore, as you touched upon the new latest solutions which are coming and possibly making life a little easier for you.
Yes.
I would like to bring in Devika here to share her perspective as Devika, what are the new tech solutions you've been seeing from not only from HP side, but otherwise, I think you would like to share that perspective.
So thanks, Sachin. So as I was mentioning, there is not one specific tool or platform here, because we are talking of data from edge to cloud, to core to cloud, and we are talking of what the entire life cycle of the data. But something interesting on the AI/ML side, as Supriya was also mentioning, that is something that we see a proliferation of tools, right? But the whole idea is, see, it's the entry barriers today are very low. So earlier we were talking about these large data stores for the purpose of MIS and regulatory reporting. But today, the entry barriers are so small that, you can take small data sets, run those, AI/ML programs. And, again, you don't need something very elaborate and, something very planned to be purchased as a big enterprise-wide tool. And you can, run, get some insight out of it and run it. But what we see, the challenge here is that, again, this leads to further fragmentation and siloed approaches. So what is happening? We're trying to solve the problems by creating multiple stores. So again, the data federation comes into the picture. How you're able to control what data is being used, how it is being used. Can you federate data rather than create multiple stores? Because with multiple stores, again, you come to the issues of more complexity, again, the security aspect, consistency of data, and all these things. So what again we see happening to achieve maximum you can say advantage out of AI/ML initiatives, it's important to bring some kind of channelization of these AI/ML initiatives across the organization. So is there some kind of a platform that can organize the efforts of the organization? So if they are having different tools used by different departments within the organizations, can they bring it to a single platform? Can they have a single that same orchestration of data that can be done by a single tool, and that same data can be made available to different stakeholders, because that same data would possibly be needed by developers, the same data is needed by the production, and people who are then the same data is being consumed by the consumers. So you have different personas who is consuming the same data, and the same data could be consumed for different purposes. So the whole idea is how to select the right platforms that are able to meet these different needs without creating duplication, removing the fragmentation that we were talking about. Yeah, so that is the whole you can say the paradigm that we are trying to address from the industry. And in fact, one of the tools that we have also brought to the market is the Esmeralda MLOps. So MLOps is something that we see today, which is the need of the hour. So while you're doing your machine learning initiatives, if you're not able to manage the life cycle of that MLOps, where right from the the data scientists who are trying to come out with the models, and then the people who are actually running the production, so the analysts, the data scientists, and the people who are running the production, there has to be some kind of a synchronization. And hence MLOps, I think, is one of the key technologies that we are seeing, which organizations are taking their AI/ML initiatives to make them more valuable, to be delivered at scale, and to be more sustainable. So I think this is one of the very strong propositions that we are seeing, which are being adopted by organizations. And just to the point, we also discussed that we're talking a lot of driverless the auto ML piece as well, because often we start with a hypothesis. In the past, we used to start with an hypothesis. We would drop dimensions of data and, create those kind of data marts. And, then, our the whole analysis used to be, very, very limited. But now we are trying not to lose any dimension of data, trying to do, run auto ML on our data sets to bring out some true value. And I think that's also, again, coming back to the point of anomaly detection, it's really improving from that side, because it is bringing to the fore insights which were never ever possible. And of course, I think very rightly mentioned, it's at the end of the day, the imagination of us humans who can drive this at the end of the day. So I think we cannot undermine that. Notwithstanding all the statistical tools and all the ML programs and access to technology that we have, I think the people part. And, today we see organizations onboarding data scientists who do not have a background maybe on their domain, but who are pure data scientists. So I think that's another field we see which is coming to the fore, and people are really seeing value in, people coming from an unbiased background, coming and, finding the most valuable insights in their organization. So the people, process, and technology, I think, so this is what is where we are trying to tie up as a technology, partner to all the customers.
Thanks, Devika. Thanks for putting that perspective. Now, since we have last exactly 10 minutes, so therefore I'm going to invite a quick view from all the other panelists on what they think the data management platform with AI capabilities. So let me get Sajid and Mr. Sivakumar react to it. Sajid, you would like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sachin. So I don't know. It's a choice to say yes or a choice to say no towards AI on the data management, right? It's quite obvious that everybody would be moved or forced to move towards an AI based management of data. That would be my straight answer. But yes, with those capabilities, as I said before, the experience, what people want to create, the value, what people want to see from the data management is going to really change. And then probably some of our panelists also mentioned, the lack of capability from a people perspective. Some of them could be solved with artificial intelligence capabilities, what we could look at. And it also, is going to change the dynamics, how we probably serving the stewardship, what we have today from a technology perspective towards business, how it's going to, it's going to change as well with using such, things and technologies like AI. And that's what I feel. It's not about a choice. It will be a forced move to use those latest technologies. AI maybe is the buzzword for now, but it might be something different going forward. So it's going to change, and that's the journey we are in. And I'm sure we also will be getting forced to adopt those.
Thanks, Sajid, for sharing that counter. How you see, Sivakumar sir, the AI capable platforms?
Yeah, I think, thanks. I think I'll second Sajid. I don't think we have a choice to call it as a choice. This is something we definitely have to pick it and do sooner or later. And being the first mover advantage will help the company to give some valuable insights. Especially the other fintech and startup players have started evolving more on this front. The regular customer expects a similar thing even from the BFSI sector. While we understand we are heavily regulated and moderated by RBIs or SEBIs of the world for banking or broking business, we still have to overcome that and do it at minimal level, where at all the possible levels where customer can experience that. And to do that, definitely data is the key, and that's the only way. Thanks.
Thank you, Sivakumar. And a very important point you touched upon, and that's what my next question is going to be leading to Shiju, and then also getting Ayaskanta here. Whatever you do in a financial industry becomes a benchmark for other industries, and therefore, while leveraging these AI capabilities to manage this craziness, madness of data, how do you, Shiju, you see the regulatory issues being addressed and the whole privacy security framework? If you would like to react to that.
Thank you, Sachin. I think I will also comment on the same which Sajid and Shiva has spoken about. There is no choice. So AI with the platform is now like an oxygen. If you have to survive, you have to adopt it. So that's the way now. And going forward, I think from the regulatory perspective, also regulatory bodies also define some sort of models which we'll have to adopt as a BFSI sector. Specifically for us, being a rating agencies, we will have to adopt their methodologies as well. But definitely we can empower our own ideas on the top of that, and can build up the robust model to protect the customers' values. So that's how what we work on to. Definitely it will have all these sort of built-in models which will have the security perspective, because security is the first as a design what we built in whenever we bring in any sort of models in place or platforms in place. I think that's the first things which we keep in on, because we sit on a lot of PI data. And when we talk about the PI data, we are custodian for that data, and definitely as a custodian, we will have to ensure that we are protecting the data very secured. Second, when it comes to more from AI perspective, definitely the use cases, business use cases help us to make more automative in terms of having non-human interventions to being more error prone. So I think that's where we bring in AI more. And as a being a credit rating agencies, we have to be more in terms of knowing different sort of models, say like EWS, which we talk about, early warning signals, predictive analysis, sentimental analysis, because that's all add values, and that helps AI and ML for us to automate and build the data, because data anywhere it's there. So how you consume the data in terms of making more meaningful business use cases out of that. So I think that's all we do today to manage it from regulatory perspective and the customer perspective and the data security perspective.
Yeah. Askanji, you would like to react to this? How you've been seeing the privacy and security framework now changing with this, the new challenges around the data management?
Yes, Sachin. I'll just like to say a few things, because we heard about more into capital market being used, or that really monetizing the data, because now fast data, there's a tick by tick data, there's a lot of concept is there. There's algo trading, which you cannot miss in the millisecond that we talk about. So Priya might be knowing what I'm talking about, and we can see day-to-day work on that side. I'm just saying it's a regulatory is a challenge, right? So what regulator put as kind of a guidelines, and what they say, think twice before you approach. So nowadays, what is happening, the organization think thrice before they approach to regulators. Because I remember those days when people are saying exchange was not allowing doing a trading on mobile app, right? So you might be concur with me on this side. There's a lot of discussion happen with the bank. You are allowing do a internet-based trading, which is just use a laptop or a computer and log into a browser and do a trading. What difference in mobile? Say OIDP technology, then they say this Wi-Fi is something different, and then OLTP different. Then a lot of jargons has been done. And over the period, the regulators are also understood. And now we see the volume of the trading happening more into mobile rather than your personal computer or your laptop, right? So that's what. And we talk about what the algo trading and everything. What is everything system driven? So if you talk about little ancient days when the ring trading was happening, people used to go to the exchange and do a trading. Now, making this pandemic, whatever, people don't know where the exchanges are, right? But that is back and forth. So I see the regulatory, they are putting some norms. I think I'll repeat the same. So they're saying that approach us and think twice and approach kind of thing, so that you are conceptually clear what you want to do with the data. But that's end of the day, this is your own data, right? But as your maturity goes on and progress in future, you talk about AI and ML. Now, any kids also, they know what is AI ML kind of thing. The school going kids, when they open the tablet or the mobile phone, they're asking, see, yesterday I searched for this, I talk about this, I was thinking about this, now this is the ad coming into my phone, right? So we never used to think about that. So that was earlier we think of the privacy, how he or she knows what I'm thinking or how I'm talking to. But now it's like more in suggestion what I'm thinking. Somebody suggesting me, hey, you are thinking this way, go this way. So we are trying to use those kind of models on this side, right? Ola, Uber, everybody using that GPS tracking. Others way to talking about the privacy. Why somebody should know that where I'm in. But nowadays it's not. So I'm getting guided where I'm in. What is nearby happening to be? I'm getting more alert towards that where I'm being, so that I should be there or not. So I take it this other way, kind of. So there's always regulator will be there to regulate the kind of data what you're playing with. End of the day, this data is our customers' data, which have lots of value. And everybody not thinking the positive mind. There are a few people who think negative, right? But you need to have a balanced approach. And if you approach regulator in the right spirit, yes, they will ask again and again questions. But if you are convinced your thought, definitely you're going to win it. And AI element, the things we'll be having in future, we'll be talking about now. What is AI element? So that's all from my side.
Thank you, Askan. With that, I think you both, you and Shiju, have really been the expert on the security and privacy side. You have really summed it up well. Now, on behalf of the group, I'm going to invite two last views from Durga Prasad ji and Supriya ji. With the journey so far, what are the best practices you would recommend to our listeners, our delegates who are following us on the webcast right now? But with that, before you react to it, I have a very small announcement for our viewers who are watching us live. Please make sure that you visit our cafeteria, refresh yourself, and stay tuned throughout the day. We are going to have some very interesting sessions coming up after this as well. So please stay tuned. Durga Prasad, would you like to react to what are the best practices you would advise to our viewers here?
Yeah, I think a couple of points. The first one would be, definitely making sure the business objective is clear. Like I think Mr. Shiju said, you can collect as much data as you want and work on it, but unless you have a clear business objective, it's almost a case of garbage in, garbage out. So you need to be clear what is it that you are seeking as an outcome from the data and be clear about it. And the second part would be related to security and the regulation, making sure you have a clear eye on what's happening on the regulatory front. And the other part is as you move towards a common data strategy and move into a data lake and so on, from a transactional system, unless your security is rock solid, you are just opening up a wide, set of data for somebody to take and walk away with and have a greater risk there. That's the second part of it. The third is obviously making sure that, like I think everybody agreed, AI ML is the way forward, and over time, that's something you can't live without. But the whole aspect of, having maturity in the way you handle. So ML ops, like, Ms. Devika said, will be key. That's the way it will separate the winners in this game from those who will be and also run in the whole environment.
Right. No, you really put it well. Supriya ji, your final piece of advice here for our listeners.
Yeah, so as everyone has said, one of the most important aspects is the data security. So data at rest encryption, data at motion encryption, data security, who gets access, model, governance, that is of prime importance. Second is unlocking the value of data. Unlocking the value of data, we have heard this term, but we have to move towards the AI ML approach because that moves into a predictivity, which so far we have not faced. What we have done is we look at the data, we analyze it from the analytical seat to analyze trends, what happened in the past, audits and all. But with AI ML will come the power of prediction, power of detecting, beforehand. So that we need to all start thinking about it. We definitely need to start thinking about it. There are feedbacks that people are immature, people do not know what they want, but everyone have to start thinking of unlocking the power through AI ML. That's the way to go. That is definitely, especially in operations. So what Devika was saying was very interesting. Operations, predictions on errors which can happen. If you analyze the operations data and you can give a prediction on that, it will help to tune our regular operations also, which we do in the capital market, banking and all. So AI/ML, definitely that is a trend out there, data federation, and the way we do data projects. This is one last word I wanted to say. Data projects, all divisions start their data projects in totality, all going in parallel, A going into B, B going into C. So that a very centralized approach on the data projects which will be undertaken at the corporate level, that we also need to think about it. We need to put a focus on that, not haphazard projects all over the place. So that was a few points I had.
That was a beautiful articulation and closing summary of this. So with that, let me invite final thank you remarks from Devika here. Devika, you would like to just summarize?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a very interesting discussion that we had today. And I think we all agree that data is at the core of business today. So, it's, as I mentioned, it is, it's not just for a particular application or a use case, but, it is at the core of every business action. And a unified data management, I think it's all about identifying the right data, relevant data, storing it correctly with all the choices that we have today, and then being able to unlock the insights out of the data. So as just back to that point which Supriya Madam mentioned, that it's about the data projects today. So we should not be looking at data from an application perspective or an analytics perspective, but the moment the data comes into the environment or into a customer's environment, I think that is the day when, that is the point or juncture where we need to decide who will have extra data, how the data has to be utilized, who all will have, who will not have access, where it can go, where it cannot go, for how long it has to be retained. And I think if we have a view of that, and that is when we move to data management versus storage management, and abstract that that complexity of physical storage management, and move to the era of data management and unlocking the insights. And I think when we have that unified view, irrespective of where the data is sitting, and how we are being able to utilize it, I think we'll be able to unlock the insights, and we'll be the true data innovators and not just data managers. So that's a short summary from my side.
Thank you, Devika. Thanks for that closing remark, and making sure that I think we all walk with a great benchmark of the best practices this panel has suggested on the data management strategy. And with that, we come to an end of this insightful session. To sum up, identifying and exploiting and monetizing data in a coordinated and a profitable manner gives competitive advantage to financial services organization. Modernizing your data management is the step to drive your business outcomes. The wealth of data that financial institutions are continuously amassing can help create personalized services and construct contextualized experiences eventually for their customers. The explosive growth of digital data has opened up new avenues for our growth, provided you can derive actionable insights from the varied information sources which you have. The key lies in modernizing your data management processes, and this panel has really put the best practices really one can follow. With that, thank you everyone for being with us today. Have a great day and a goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.